Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Hello, C.
Hi, Kay.
How you doing?
Pretty good. Been drinking your bleach.
My bleach? How dare you? Oh, I thought you said you've been drinking my bleach.
No, have you been drinking bleach?
I was just going to run with it. Like, it's a weird joke, but all right.
Yeah, you really yes-and it.
Yeah. That's me. I'm an improviser.
Injecting your Lysol?
Uh-huh. Only in my eyeballs, though.
Why only in your eyeballs?
Well, because it's super painful. So, as long as we're doing stupid stuff.
And you're a masochist.
Right. You know, all jokes aside, once Trump said that dumb shit, the New York Poison Control Center got, I think, a 50% spike in bleach and disinfectant poison emergency calls.
Emergency calls?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
People were ingesting and or injecting disinfectant and bleach. This is why, like, I get, like, there's people who joke about it, like, I'm totally off camera. There's people who joke about it, like, if there's people who are dumb enough to inject disinfectant just because the president said it might help, then we should let them die, you know? It's a funny joke and all, but there are people dying from this. And this is the problem with having a president like Trump, is that when he says something to that kind of an audience, millions of people at once, he kills people.
Yeah, but he was just being sarcastic.
Right.
It's okay. I like how he thinks that's better. Like,
right.
He thinks it's better to be sarcastic and trolling instead of just asking questions or asking, naive questions.
And it's just such an obvious lie. Yeah. Like, he's just so... Did you see that follow-up the next day? The little mini press conference? I didn't actually
see it. I heard about it, though.
I saw, like, a couple minutes of it. It was brutal. It was one of the only times that I have seen him, like, just... He didn't even seem convinced of his bullshit. It was... I'm pretty sure I've never seen that. He was just, like, really... He looked kind of defeated.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is excellent. And then I heard he's scaling back his press conferences, cutting his own segments short, might be doing fewer of them. He said it's because he doesn't have time for it, because the media is unfair to him. But the reality is it's because he's killing even more people than he already has, and his team probably told him this will lose you the re-election if you keep giving press conferences.
Just shut up, and maybe you'll get re-elected.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's...
By the way, for those who don't know what we're talking about, what is today?
26th.
April 26, 2020. And a few days ago, Trump, in one of his coronavirus press conferences, suggested that perhaps injecting disinfectant would cure the virus. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and UV light.
Yeah, the UV light thing was just like, there is, like, that's a treatment, but like that part was just him sounding stupid, trying to talk about a real thing and just bumbling around. But then he went on to talk about disinfectant and how, if it works on the surface, then maybe we can get inside. Maybe you can inject it, maybe, clean out the body that way. And suggested that they start a research project to see if that'll help. Then in the follow-up the next day, he was saying he was being sarcastic. Mm-hmm. He was just kidding. He was pointing at the reporters. He wasn't asking the doctors, which he very clearly was asking the doctors. But then he also said how he heard that disinfectant is helpful. Like he's the one discovering that disinfectant on your hands is good for the virus. Like, they've been saying that for 3 months now. And then he said that he heard that it was good on hard surfaces. And, your hands are pretty hard, Right. Your hands are not hard surfaces. Right. They're porous, soft surfaces. So, like, he didn't even, like, he's thinking of, like, tables, and he can't tell the difference in texture between a hard surface and his hands. And this isn't the follow-up press conference where he was trying to dodge the whole fuck up in the first place. The guy is just, he's a buffoon on a scale that is just unprecedented.
Did you see our friend Sergey posted this picture? And I don't know when it was taken. When you see it, you kind of fill in the blanks in your head that, oh, maybe this was right before he gave the press conference. I don't know if it was. But he's literally standing there staring at this board written by, I don't know, CDC or some experts talking about how disinfectants are helpful. Right. And he's standing there just looking at it. And it's funny because, like, the caption's just like, oh, you could just see the wheels spinning in his head. Like, aha, I figured it out.
I'm going to go tell everybody.
Yeah, I will be a hero.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, maybe we can inject disinfectant. I do like as a general principle. Well, it's not even deliberate, but I don't actually listen to a lot of his press conferences. I don't have a lot of interest in hearing the man speak, but I am curious about the whole. He's clearly an idiot, but he's got some kind of skill, Yeah. But
he's savvy.
Yeah. I'm really curious about that. Like, I'm really curious about learning more about how absurdly, cartoonishly incompetent morons succeed at things.
I think it's because he's so just bold and unfiltered,
Yeah.
and that's just very appealing to a lot of people because people like people that are confident and sure, even if they're wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Because people, I mean, not everybody, but most people probably want to be led, and if somebody's willing to play the part, whatever, especially like in the business world where he actually came from, that enabled him the cash flow to get himself elected. It was, I mean, the business world is known for just being full of shit.
Yeah.
Up to the ears.
Indeed.
So he probably fit right in.
Yeah. Well, we have done 3 episodes talking about the coronavirus. I don't know if we're exhausting our audience, the 5 people that listen to us.
Yeah, if we just keep going around on the same shit, probably eventually. Yeah, there's no news. It's a thing still.
Yeah, we're still inside. We're still washing our hands.
Yeah.
All that. Burning Man
Wait,
got
you wash
canceled.
your hands?
I do. At least every other day.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
I don't want to weaken my immune system too much, so
Yeah.
I just keep them as dirty as possible. Anyway, yeah, Burning Man was canceled, yeah.
Yeah, Burning Man was canceled. Didn't surprise me.
No.
They had their first wave of ticket sales in March, and it was such an iffy time. It was kind of when everyone was even realizing oh shit, we should social distance and stay inside. And I remember, so the first wave of Burning Man tickets is called FOMO tickets, fear of missing out. And they call it that because they just make it really expensive. And there's nothing special about the tickets. It's the same tickets that everyone else gets. But the reason they make it so expensive is because the regular sale tickets or the low income tickets are really hard to get. They the moment they go on sale, their website usually crashes. You're in a queue, and usually you don't get them. So they have a certain batch for people who are willing to pay more just to make sure they get them. So I always get those tickets. I can afford it. Why not? And I had some friends that were going to come for the first time this year. And so I told them hey, if you can afford it, I would recommend just getting these FOMO tickets because it's really hard to get tickets otherwise. And then within a week, this pandemic is hitting. And I'm like, hey guys, so I know I just convinced you to buy these tickets coming up, but I just gotta say, I don't know what the fuck is gonna go on with this pandemic.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is gonna get canceled. Everything's so iffy right now. I looked at the back of my ticket from last year and it says they don't give refunds. So after convincing them to buy them, I went from convincing them to buy them to saying buy them at your own risk.
Yeah. Did they do it?
I don't know I actually don't know. I think some of them were deciding to wait for the normal sale because they were thinking that the pandemic would at least slow the people who were going to go to the point where the tickets wouldn't be in such high demand. But yeah, I bought them, and
are they not refunding?
I think I heard something to the effect of they're going to try to maybe refund some of it, but I'm not holding my breath on that. I know they didn't refund South by Southwest. I mean, those are totally different festivals, but still.
Yeah, I feel like it would. I'm sure any legitimate event like that would at least make an effort. Well, I'm not sure, but most would if it's possible. I guess the problem is that stuff is planned so far in advance that they've spent the ticket money on supplies and licensing and shit, so they probably don't have it to refund.
Yeah, they're spending a lot on overhead, and they make it clear on the website and their ticket that they don't give refunds, so they're in no obligation to. Yeah. So I would be surprised if I got anything back on that. But that's okay. It is what it is.
Yeah. All things considered, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, there is a certain symbolic cachet with Burning Man, and it is kind of rattling for it to be canceled. But at the end of the day, it's a fun festival.
Yeah, and it'll probably be there next year, if not the year after.
Or never again.
I don't think never again.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe though.
Stop it. No.
I'm saying.
Don't bum me out like that.
Oh, it could happen.
Ugh.
So, oh, never mind. Let's drop the coronavirus. What you got?
All right. So, first of all, our avid listener, Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Friend of the podcast, lovely woman, had a question for you, not me.
Oh.
Yeah. She said she heard you're an avid reader and she wants to know what you're reading right now.
Oh. I'm not really much of an, I wouldn't say I'm an avid reader, but
you do have, or you used to have until I got a bookshelf, just a stack of 30 books hanging out on the coffee table at any given moment.
I scanned through a lot of, I mean, I guess, I don't know. Recently I started reading a bit more. I definitely read a lot of internet stuff, you know, articles and Wikipedia and that kind of thing. And I guess that counts. Last night I was reading a lot about organizational structures, nonprofits versus for-profits versus hybrid structures. And that naturally kind of led into associationism, it was called, which is like this abstract concept. It's just what it sounds like. It's the idea of people associating. So from there, I started thinking deeply and reading deeply about, I mean, I don't really know what the word is for this, but sort of like social philosophy in a way, thinking about how paradigms and expectations from the public and private and government interests have kind of evolved over the years and centuries and millennia. And noticed an interesting trend with hybrid nonprofit for-profit companies springing up that's pretty interesting. So that was the most recent thing that I delved deeply into. And then I was reading a book about ninjas. Before that, the Book of Ninja, which was pretty interesting. It was the first English translation, just published, I think, 5 years ago, of the Bensen Shukai. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but it's the it's considered like the major central literature tome of ninja philosophy and tactics. So that was interesting. Harvard Business Review books.
Do you have some ninja philosophy to throw at me?
No.
Oh.
I was just the introduction.
That's very ninja of you.
Yeah, that was misdirection. I'm actually not reading a ninja book. Yeah. But no, the ninja, as they're called, ninja. Mm-hmm. That's what I learned from the book. No, I don't know. I guess ninjas is probably the plural. I have no idea. But they're pretty interesting. Some people, it turns out, don't know they're real. Did I ever tell you about, I was at a party.
Yeah, tell the story.
I was at a party and I was with some coworkers and I was talking about this documentary I had seen about ninjas and this historic ninja battle there was a battle of, like, I think it was something like, it was a small group of ninjas in a ninja castle that were vastly outnumbered by the samurai who were like approaching to attack, and they used all these crazy ninja tricks they lost eventually, but they really drug it out for a long time with their weird ninja shit. Like they did this thing where there was a swamp around the castle. So they went and took a bunch of tall grass from a field nearby and tied it into these little weighted bundles and sunk it partway down into the swamp. So it looked like the swamp was grass because the grass was sticking out the top. So then when the samurai came charging along, they all just fell into a swamp. And so like the first wave of samurais was just like wiped out, stumbling over each other, drowning in a swamp. That's some ninja shit.
Yeah, some booby traps.
That's clever. Anyway, I was talking about this, and this guy... What's up, Hugo? How you doing? He was like...
Does Hugo listen?
No, I haven't talked to Hugo in a couple years. He probably didn't listen. If you do, what's up? Say hi sometime. Send us some listener questions. But no, then he started making fun of me for believing that ninjas were real. And I was like, well, they are. I mean, like, I just watched this whole documentary about them. It wasn't like a fake documentary. Plus, I thought it was common knowledge that ninjas were real, you know. And then somebody else came along and was like, what are you guys arguing about? And he was like, Kim thinks ninjas are real. And then that guy started laughing at me. And like, the ninjas are totally real, 100%. There's
Are they currently real, or were they real?
No.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
they were real.
They definitely were, yeah, for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
It's documented historical facts, no question.
They think you watched like Tom Cruise, The Last Samurai.
Right.
I thought it was a documentary or something.
Yeah, like, I don't know what the deal is. It's weird, and I mean, certainly there's a lot of mythology around ninjas that's not true, obviously, like they're magic, you know. They deliberately propagated that kind of mythology because they're ninjas.
Hell yeah.
And they wanted the psychological impact of that. And they did believe in some... They had a lot of Chinese influence, Chinese astrology influence, so they got a lot into mysticism and stuff. And they certainly had some kooky beliefs, but by and large, they were basically special forces covert operatives. That's the analogy. They would sneak around, go behind enemy lines, wear disguises, do things like assassination and sabotage that the samurai were too noble to do. And yeah, really interesting and real. So I was reading that book. That was interesting. And been reading the Harvard Business Review a lot. I cycle back to that a lot for the last few years. They publish some really good series. Their 10 Best series is great, where they'll have like 10 articles on a given topic compiled into a book. So I was reading...
And they review businesses?
No, the Harvard Business Review is a magazine put out by the Harvard School of Business.
Okay. And what do they review?
They just... the magazine is just called The Review. It just reviews like business ideas, and people just publish articles like academics.
So about business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes entrepreneurs or executives with academic credentials, other times just business academics will just publish like case studies, and the range of topics is really impressive and well done. There's like anything from emotional intelligence to resilience to board meetings. It's like a good swath of stuff. It's basic. It makes sense because, I mean, really businesses, organizations are just groups of people, and you're a person, and you got to understand yourself and them in order to understand the bigger organic system. And they do a good job of explaining stuff in pretty simple, accessible ways. It's pretty interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was also reading the 4th book in the Hyperion series, which is a sci-fi series. It's really good.
What's that about?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, that series, like, well, I mean, spaceships and shit, you know, stuff like that. But I don't want to give anything away for those who haven't read it. If you like fiction and sci-fi or either one, well, sci-fi is fiction. But check it out. I won't say too much, but I will say that there are moments in the 4-book series that go so far into, I guess, metaphysics, you could say. Like, fairly deep stuff that, like, it really, the story kind of spans more or less everything, which is pretty cool. The first one is my favorite so far. It's called Hyperion. It's really good.
That's cool.
Yeah. It drags a little bit, so if anybody out there starts reading it and it drags a little, just push through. It's worth it.
Yeah, I wish I were a better reader. I think I've talked about this before. I know I have with you. I can't remember if I have on the podcast, but like, I'm so bad at reading books. Like, my mind immediately just goes into thinking about something else, and I realize I'm not really reading what I'm reading. Just a short attention span. I definitely know what I like to read. So I was trying to force myself to read classics, like classic literature. And so I started with Animal Farm. Great. I love Orwell because he's like just really clear, concise, to the point writing. And that's the kind of writing I really like. Then I tried to read John Steinbeck of Mice and Men. And John Steinbeck's one of my mom's favorite authors. I fucking read the first paragraph 20 times. It was so fucking boring.
Super boring.
Because he's people might laugh at this, but he's so descriptive. I hate descriptions. I don't fucking care what something looks like or feels like or smells like. I mean, give me like one sentence of description. Sure. Set the scene. Like, I get that. But like, really flowery like description, I fucking can't stand it. I don't care. So I couldn't get through that.
It's hard. I tried to read The Grapes of Wrath when I was like 12, and there was literally like 3 pages of a turtle crossing a dirt road. And that's when I gave up because I was like, man, this book is so boring. And then I got to that and slogged through, and it was just a turtle crossing a dirt road. That's all that happened. It's like, I'm done, Steinbeck.
Yeah,
you lost me. I like the titles of his books, but that's it. I can't read them.
I tried to read Dracula. That was also very boring.
Yeah.
I think I told you that I was like, I read to the point where he got to Dracula's house, and you laughed because I guess you've read it and you know how long it takes for him just to get to Dracula's house.
That's the beginning of the story. You know?
And it takes
in the movies,
forever.
like the Bram
Probably
Stoker's
starts
Dracula. Yeah. Keanu Reeves shows up at Gary Oldman's castle in like 2 minutes. So it's like the beginning of the movie. The guy gets to the castle, you know.
Then the story is like reading letters about Dracula, and it's like
God,
it's not interesting. Like,
no,
he's like on a bus. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess things have just changed so much. I can't imagine like to get a real appreciation, to get the perspective to appreciate those stories for what they were at the time would just mean boring yourself to death reading all the other shit that was being published at the time.
Right.
And then you'd be like, oh, wow, this is crazy. He got to a castle, you know?
Yeah.
But like...
a lot of like Hitchcock movies, for instance, are like that he's known for being kind of slow. And
yeah.
But yeah, I think people just had more attention spans then. Oh, I tried to read Crime and Punishment. I really tried to read Crime and Punishment because I was like, if I can finish this book, I'll be really proud of this. I actually got really far. It is 1,000,000 pages long. I think I got through like 500,000, and I got to the crime. No, sorry. I read like 250,000, and I got to the crime, and I'm like, oh, so I have 750,000 pages of punishment. Is that what this book is? Like,
oh my God.
And he's so fucking confusing. Who writes that?
Dostoevsky.
Yeah. He's fucking confusing because, first of all, he's using, I get it, he's Russian. He's using, like, the characters have Russian names. So that's, like, a little tricky in and of itself.
Can't blame him for that.
Okay, I'm not, but I will blame him for this. He switches between using their first name and last name.
Oh, that's not cool.
So many fucking times I'm like, wait, who is this person? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's the mother. They just switched that's name they used for her. Yeah, so confusing.
That just sounds like bad writing. Maybe it's a Russian thing, though.
I don't know.
Maybe they just do that a lot.
I don't know, man. This is why I love SparkNotes.
Yeah.
SparkNotes is, I think it's really made for like college students. They're like study guides of books. They're so great. They give you chapter summaries. They tell you about the symbolism and the motifs and the characters. And it's just broken down really simple. I remember I read Handmaid's Tale years ago, or tried to. Someone recommended it to me, and I tried reading it when I was traveling, thinking it'd be a good beach read. And if anyone knows Handmaid's Tale, it's depressing as fuck.
Not a good beach read.
No, it's not like a light, fun read. It's about this like dystopian future where women are slaves, and that seemed really slow to me too. And I gave up, I think, like halfway through, feeling like nothing was really happening. Like it just felt like, okay, this woman lives in this horrible dystopian future, and you know, there's different classes and blah blah blah, and it was just a big downer. And then I stopped reading it, and then I read the SparkNotes, and I found out what happened after I stopped reading, and I was like, oh my God, what a great book. Like, it was amazing. And I kind of was kicking myself for not finishing it, but also I think it was just better I read the SparkNotes. Like, I don't think I would have appreciated, ironically, I don't think I would have appreciated actually reading the book. I appreciate it more just reading the SparkNotes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that was, for me, I feel like the moment or the period in my life when I decided that it's okay to not finish books. That was a moment of sort of ego maturity for me. Because as a kid, I was very disappointed in myself for failing to get through so many classics, but they're hard to get through. And in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't waste the time, because if it's not enjoyable, and maybe I could have augmented it with SparkNotes, and then maybe it would have been tolerable with the analysis or something. But there was other stuff to read that was engaging. So, like, you know, ultimately, we're going to die one day. We have finite lives, and just forcing your way through something like Crime and Punishment or anything Steinbeck wrote, if it doesn't appeal to you, God, it's such a slog.
Yeah, why waste your time?
Yeah.
I guess for me, it's like I feel like I could train myself to be a better reader. So I was kind of like trying to force myself to read these books so I could appreciate reading more.
Well,
but I think it's better to just read what you like.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is just different books, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, my taste in like what I want to read at any given time is so variable that, like, I just know that whatever I'm reading, there's almost no chance that I'm going to finish it in that span. Like when I read a novel, if it takes me a week to read it, the odds are really good that even if I finish it, it's not going to be in that week. I'm going to put it down, start reading something else, and then come back to it in like a month or something. And most novels I don't finish. Most books I don't finish. I mean, of all the books I have, like, oh man, I've probably finished 1%. You know, I've had probably about 7,000 books.
It's so good when you get into a book you really like, though.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's nothing like it. The last time I felt that was with, what's her name? Gillian Flynn. She wrote Gone Girl, and then she wrote 2 other really good books. I can't remember, but the same sort of like mystery thriller. And like, she's such a good writer. And I remember just being so engrossed in all 3 of those books.
I think you had me read one of them, and I couldn't get into it. I didn't. I really didn't like it. It felt too written, I think is what I said about it at the time. Yeah.
Huh.
It felt very like constructed, you know, like the language was almost like too good in a way. I don't know. It's definitely subjective. I don't think it was like low quality, but it was
just not for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, for me it was like that was actually a really good example of a woman who can write descriptions, but like she would just write it so concisely. She could just describe something in one sentence and you just got it. And then it like moved on to the story. And it was just like, I just thought she was brilliant. Or she is brilliant.
An author that's weird about descriptions is Dean Koontz, because like he writes a lot of suspense and horror and sci-fi and like exciting stuff. But he has this weird obsession with like plants and flowers and calling them by their correct names. And like he'll have half a page, like every chapter, talking about a bush and using words
sure
I don't know.
Reading a botany book?
It felt like it, because like here's what gets me that's so frustrating about that is that when you're telling a story, if you want people to move through your story progressively, which is the goal ostensibly, I think it was Somerset Maugham who made a good point, which is that the goal of a writer is to be read, which also changed my writing style when I read that. And I felt like such a pretentious ass for that being a revelation, you know, like quit being so goddamn dense. But with Dean Koontz, everything's going along fine. It's exciting. It's simple. It's clear. And then just 20 words about flower using jargon. He uses flower jargon. So what happens then is that I can't picture these flowers because he's not describing them. He's talking about like Latin words and shit and like names of a leaf. And what he could have said was there were red flowers by the door. I know what red flowers look like. You know, I can picture that. But instead it's this like weird thing where I just have to skip it. And then I feel like I'm not part of the story anymore. It's really bad storytelling.
Yeah, that is bad.
I mean, maybe flower enthusiasts could appreciate Dean Koontz.
Yeah. Sounds like he was like showing off.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, I know what these are called.
Yeah. What a dumb way to... And flowers, like... I mean, flowers are cool, but come on.
Yeah.
You know who I really admire a lot is James Patterson, because first, how do I put it? It's not that he's a bad writer, but he admits pretty openly that he's not a stylist. Like his style doesn't exist really. It's just what he's really good at is pacing. He's very succinct, very brief chapters, like 2 or 3 pages. They just move along so fast. Like sometimes I'll just read a James Patterson novel that I don't really like, but I somehow enjoy reading it because it moves so fast and I've like accomplished something. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he's just a master at the craft, like the pacing and the structure of a story. Just gets so suspenseful, even when like if you take any one sentence out of it, it just looks like a 8th grader wrote it.
And he's one of those writers that just cranks them out, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I think he's actually the highest earning author in the world.
Well, yeah, you see his stuff just grocery stores and he's one of those authors.
Yeah, the last year I heard it was like in I think 2017 he made like $90 million.
Wow.
Yeah, and
good for him.
And part of what he does though, it's actually a little it's kind of cheating, but not like there's anything wrong with this. But he co-writes a lot. So he basically he'll take on writers that he knows personally, like a lot of copywriters, because he was an advertising executive before he was a novelist, and he'll work with them on a story, and he'll essentially assign them, like he'll give them an outline and assign them a chapter, and then they'll send him the chapter, and then he sends notes back, and he kind of trains them to write like him, and then churns out like 2 books in a month that way after he's got a couple people trained up. So then like in a year, he's got like 8 new books out.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're all bestsellers.
Yeah.
He's got it figured out, that guy.
Got a system.
Yeah. He has a cool masterclass too. I tried to get you to watch that a few years ago.
I think I did. No, yeah, I did.
You watched some of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember his biggest thing was like, you have to do an outline. That's what he kept insisting on.
Yeah, the most important thing was the outline, definitely.
Yeah.
And he went into pretty good detail about how to do it. He didn't get much into like the mechanics of storytelling, like character development and arcs and themes and that kind of stuff. But the outline shit, like
which makes sense for him if he's good at pacing. Of course, that's what he would do first,
Yeah.
and what he would think is most important.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. He would essentially write like for every chapter, he would just write it as like one long paragraph in the outline. So like when I think of an outline, that's not what I was thinking of.
Oh yeah, I think of more like bullet points.
Yeah, but I read one of his outlines and it was like a short story.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So he would do that, and then he would do it again. So basically every outline for every novel, he would rewrite the outline 5 or 6 times before he started writing the novel. And then he said about 60% of the time he would still change the story after he started writing it, which is interesting. And
I could see that. Maybe like once you're really getting into the characters and understanding them, you probably get to a point where like, well, no, they probably wouldn't do this. It doesn't make sense. And
yeah, it's so interesting to see how different writers write, and seeing the variability there is on the one hand, it's kind of like scary because it's like, well, how am I going to know what's the right way for me? But then also it's reassuring because it's like there's probably not a right way for me until there's one that I produce. Which brings me to really the only thing I can remember that I think all writers say is that you have to write a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
When you're not inspired, that's the key. If you're expecting to be inspired, apparently, you're just never going to get it done.
Yep. Yeah.
And I can vouch for that because I've been planning to write a number of novels for a number of decades, but I haven't been inspired enough.
Yeah. Every time I read advice on writing, the biggest thing is like, write. Just do it. It's a muscle that you have to work out every day.
Yeah, having a routine apparently is key. And I've heard enough writers say that at this point. It seems to be ubiquitous. Like I've never heard a writer refute that. And of all the writers I've heard give advice about writing, that's in there. Mm-hmm. And some of them say like it has to be an hour a day at least, and others are like, no, like 20 minutes a day is fine. Tim Ferriss was 2 shitty pages a day. That was his goal.
Yeah, I used to do that back when I was writing more regularly, the 2 shitty pages a day.
Yeah. And that's great. I love that because like when I hear somebody
Keep
like
the stakes low.
Yeah.
Keep the bar low, and then you're like, oh, I can do this.
Right, because Patterson was saying like really you need like an hour a day, minimum of half an hour, and I was just like, oh well, I can't be a writer, because I'm just looking for any excuse to give up. It's how difficult goals go. But yeah, Ferriss 2 shitty pages. Specifically shitty pages, because he'd get bogged down trying to make them good, and then it becomes an overwhelming project, and that's not the point. I should get back into that. I should start doing 2 shitty pages a day.
We both should.
Let's
do it. It's always been in the back of my mind, like, because I was writing.
We were both
regularly.
doing that. We were sending each other's pages,
and
I remember once you criticized one of mine for being too descriptive.
Yeah, I think you were describing a door opening or something.
No, I was describing a weird janky angle to this coffee shop in Queens, and the surrounding neighborhood, and I was thoroughly convinced that it was the most beautiful prose that had ever been written. And
you just lose this part.
and then you were just like, and when you sent back your notes, you're just like, I hate it. Nothing happens. It's boring. It's description. And then I realized, yeah, okay, you're right.
Sort of. I'm right. That's just what I like, though. A lot of people like that stuff.
Yeah. There's certainly an audience for it, but it was good feedback because it reminded me that like when I am engrossed in a story, it's not because somebody's describing a corner, It's like I'm much more likely to finish a James Patterson novel that I don't like because he's so fast paced, versus some like The Name of the Wind was a novel I started reading a few years ago that by Patrick Rothfuss that I can't think of a novel with better language. Like the style was amazing, but I never finished it. And I've read like probably 12 James Patterson novels that don't even remotely compare in terms of style. So the point is, all that description, it could probably go, especially if I'm trying to write a marketable story.
Yeah. So, our good friend Jackie also sent us a Am I the Asshole that she wanted us to discuss. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So, Am I the Asshole?
Yes.
For those of you guys who know, shut up. If you don't know, it's a Reddit sub. Is that what they call it? A subreddit. Where people send in stories, real life stories that happen to them where they're asking, am I the asshole in this situation?
Or is the other person the asshole?
Or is the other person the asshole? Okay. So this one's pretty intense and it's very emotional. I was adopted before I was born and put into the arms of my adopted dads when I was an hour old and my birth mom had disappeared from the hospital already. I grew up happy. I didn't want for anything. I was successful and fine. It was all good in my hood. My birth mom recently arrived on campus dorm with my younger birth sister because apparently my younger sister is pretty sick and needs a kidney and a lobe of liver to survive. We have the same father, so we're blood match, and we should be a perfect donation match as well. But that doesn't matter because I don't owe anyone shit and I'm not going to give up parts of my body that I fucking need. Man, I blew the fuck up. They were standing on my doorstep like they had some sort of right to even find or speak to me, and I blew up. She had the audacity to bring her child who, if the number is run right, was born exactly 10 months after me. She gave me up for adoption and then found me without my permission or consent because her child was sick, and she thought that because I was her blood and she had the fucking right, she says fuck a lot, fucking right to ask me for body parts for her baby. If I wanted to give my kidney and my lobe of my liver away, I would. No need to turn up and try to guilt me. I screamed that she didn't have the right to ask me for anything, that she was disgusting, that I never met her in my life, and here she is trying to get body parts of my body, that she was a waste, and that by having more children after she'd put me up for adoption, she'd gotten rid of the right to ask me for anything. Am I bitter about being adopted out? No, but I take offense to being hunted down and found by a woman who has birthed me and then dipped. I have lots of issues from the fact that she drank during pregnancy with me, and now that I'm older, I've shaken them off. My birth sister said, I'm dying, and I said, that sounds like a personal issue, and shut the door. Called campus police, and then put all of my social media to private and locked everything I own. No need to have anyone else try to find me. I recently told my dads that they said that I was the asshole because I shouldn't have blown up, but she was the bigger asshole because she arrived from Atlanta, where I was born and where she lived, to UC Berkeley, where I go to school, with no heads up to anyone. I've also been getting messages from my birth family begging me to reconsider and sending me long letters, but I don't care. I need those parts of my body and I don't owe anyone anything. If anyone was wondering how they found me, I'm a college blogger and I have social media filled with information about me. It wouldn't be hard to find me. This happened back in September 2019, and I'm not sure what's happened to them since then because I was blocked and have cut them all off. And she writes some caveat just saying...
Because I blocked and cut them off.
Yes, blocked and cut, sorry. And then she wrote a note kind of at the beginning just saying that they're both adults, like she's 24 and her sister's 23.
I think I agree with her dad's that she was an asshole, but I think what her mom did is more of an asshole thing. Because had she never met her mom?
Right. She just showed up.
Yeah, that's obviously, like, when emotions run high, I think she knows probably after a while that, like, screaming at people is usually not necessary. But under the circumstances, I think she's still less wrong.
Yeah, I think so too. It seems very cold to say that you're a waste and to tell her sister that this is a personal problem and slam a door in her face. Yeah. But given the circumstances, her birth mother was obviously not tactful about this at all. She handled this very poorly.
And I mean, granted, we can only know so much about somebody from a story like this, but
from their side of it, yeah.
Yeah, but I kind of have a rough sense of the sort of person she is, and I can understand, first of all, if you've never even met your mom. No, that her mom.
Oh, her mom, okay.
Yeah. If you've never even met her, like, that's going to be a certain amount of mental weight on you already. Yeah. And then when you do, it's just because she's trying to save her other kid that you've never met. And
a big ask.
Yeah. Give me your organs. Like, Yeah. And the judgment, I mean, to be the mother in that situation, I certainly wouldn't blame her for trying whatever she could to help her other daughter, but there's better ways to go about it.
Yeah.
Don't just fucking show up out of the blue. Hi, I'm your mom. This is your sister. Give me your kidney.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's like, it's a little... She could have, just about any other way she could have done this would probably be better.
Yes.
Her mom. But I'm trying to picture, like, what would happen if maybe she first started out with sending a letter, you know, and just kind of slowly like, hey, heads up, I'm here. I'd like to meet and all this. And then I'm trying to imagine, like, okay, maybe she's like, all right, I'll meet my birth mom. And then later kind of a reveal of, hey, by the way, your sister needs organs. I wonder if she would have still blown up in the same way if it had happened that way. Because on the one hand, that seems like a kinder way to do it, more tactful. But at the same time, I could also see someone feeling like they were duped almost. Like, oh, this is okay. So this is why you reached out, you know, and all this other bullshit was just bullshit.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'd say she probably wouldn't react at the same amplitude, you know, because she wouldn't be like thrown off and startled, you know, by the whole thing. I mean, just I like if somebody shows up at my house unannounced that I know and love, I'm so angry at them. Like,
right.
Well, I remember a couple of years ago, or several years ago, I had an apartment near my brother's apartment, and he just showed up one day, and I was like, "Don't you ever come to my house." And then he came back a couple days later, and just knocked on the door, and I just opened it. It was like, fucking tell you.
Yeah.
It was like but he got it at that point because we're brothers and we grew up together and we can communicate aggressively to one another in shorthand. But the point is, like, anybody showing up unannounced is these days in the modern times is off-putting. Mm-hmm. And then it's your mom that you've never met, you know, like that's awkward. And then, she wants part of your body.
Yeah.
Just a quick succession of like failure after failure, cascading failure.
Yes. I don't even like it when people call me. Like, I actually think it's rude if people just call me. It's like, no, text me and tell me if you want to talk on the phone.
Right, yeah. Ask me if I'm free to talk on the phone.
Exactly. Yeah. Just like, fuck it. It's so funny because it's like that used to be the norm. Like, that used to be how we just communicate. You just call someone. But now it seems rude. Like, it comes across to me, and I know, like, this is not most people's intentions, but it comes across to me as... whatever you're doing is not as important as talking to me right now.
You're just kind of a brat, honestly.
Yeah, but you're a bit the same way. Like, you really don't like unannounced guests or like.
Well, guess that, yeah, because like the thing with the phone call is if somebody calls me, I just instinctually decline it.
Yeah, me too.
And then I'll take 30 seconds and decide whether I'm going to call them back or not.
Yeah.
But if somebody's at the door, like I either open it or hide, you know, which means I open it. So.
Yeah, that's another level of rude.
When I first moved here and you were traveling the world and I was just here alone, I eventually stopped answering the door because there were so many people handing out flyers that like...
That's the only people that come to our door. It's like Jehovah's Witnesses or so like some weird crackhead wanting to like clean my lawn. Yeah,
yeah. And it would seriously be like, if there was a period of a couple months where it was like once a week, somebody was knocking on the door. And
really?
After I might be exaggerating. It was a couple years ago, but it was a lot. It was like way more than I would have expected. After like 3 or 4, I just stopped answering the door. Yeah, because I'm not expecting anybody, unless they have a pizza in their hand.
Right.
I used to order a lot of pizzas.
Nice.
Yeah.
Drink a lot of champagne.
Yeah, a lot of champagne, a lot of beer. Finished it off with some Krispy Kreme donuts in the morning.
Nice. That's just a nice healthy diet.
Yeah. Shake off the alcohol, you know. Gained a little weight in that period.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, go figure.
Huh.
1,000 grams of carbs a day.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. That was a good one.
I was talking about donuts. My stomach started growling. Did you hear that?
No.
Oh, anyway. Yes, thanks, Jackie. And thanks to the asshole who wrote this story.
No, so we agree it's just not the asshole?
No, I mean, I think what her dad said is right, that she's kind of an asshole, but under the circumstances,
it's understandable.
Yeah, she was less of an asshole, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So another thing I wanted to talk about is Zoom. So, Zoom is cracking down on virtual sex parties.
No. Yeah. It says Zoom is cracking down on your virtual sex parties.
Yours specifically.
Are you talking to me or you?
Probably
Because mine are perfectly intact.
Yeah, so apparently Zoom is, what language do they use? They're like forbidding
Birthday suits?
yeah, birthday suits. I don't know. Yeah, they're saying don't do naughty stuff. Yeah, user policy explicitly prohibit obscene, indecent, illegal, or violent activity on or content on the platform. So, meaning that displaying pornography, engaging in sexual acts falls outside the acceptable use guidelines. And my guru, Dan Savage, made a tweet saying, I don't know, seems like Zoom could maybe turn a blind eye to consenting adults organizing safe online sex parties on their platform. How hard would that be?
Well, okay, so the situation is that Zoom has that problem where they have randomly generated meeting numbers that people can just bust in on.
Figure out, yeah.
And that means that they could expose minors to pornography on their platform.
Yeah, in this article, they said there is an issue with asshole alt-right people like infiltrating random meetings and just throwing out racial slurs and just being assholes or whatever. So yeah, it makes sense because you could just make up some numbers and it might be...
Yeah, meeting crashing became a thing like a few weeks ago on
really?
Zoom. They have a lot of issues, actually. And I mean, one of the issues, too, is that, like, how do they know? They claim, I don't know if they're still claiming, but they used to claim that they had end-to-end encryption, which would mean that they don't know what anybody's doing on their platform.
So according to this article, they said they're using machine learning.
Yeah, that could be true, but I also read that they actually didn't have end-to-end encryption. That somebody asked them because it didn't seem like they did, and they confirmed that they actually didn't, even though their website said they did.
They didn't have what?
End-to-end encryption.
So what does that mean?
That's where, like, only you and the person on the other end can see the transmission. So like a lot of messaging apps like WhatsApp has end-to-end encryption. And granted, I'm sure there's ways to hack it. Probably. But
how easy is it to just say that you have that and you don't?
I don't know. I don't know enough about security to know. Because, I mean, the fact that they were saying it, it seems like it would be hard to verify. Because, like, why would they be saying it for so long if it wasn't true? If you could just easily check, you know? But once somebody asked them, they were like, yeah, we can't do it.
I thought this was funny. So my friend sent me this, and there's a line in here that said, queer users have also begun throwing mutual masturbation sessions to make up for the loss of physical intimacy as they engage in social distancing. And I'm like, are just queer people figure this out?
What are the other people doing?
Just heterosexual people and haven't thought of it. My friend pointed out that this is from a website called Them, which is specifically a queer website.
Okay.
But
I really want to know what the straight people are doing if they're not mutually masturbating.
I think, of course they are. But I think they're just biased towards queer people. And so... They're making it relevant to queer people with every article that they write, which I think is kind of silly.
With straight people are jerking off a lot on Zoom, also queer people. I have to read the article. I can't judge them too harshly.
It's pretty short. What were you saying about Zoom being basically malware?
It's them.us.
Yeah.
That's clever. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think I mentioned this in the last episode. I haven't personally followed up on any of this. But David Heinemeier Hansen, who is a well-respected programmer, entrepreneur, and writer, was letting them have it on Twitter a few weeks back, just pointing out a lot of problems. Basically, their software is modeled. It's from what he said, it seemed to be modeled much like malware in the sense that it would circumvent user consent by imitating a system dialog. So you think you're giving your system your password, but you're actually giving Zoom your password, so then it has root access to your system, which is bad. And it was bypassing log files, so if you were to get the idea to delete it, you couldn't actually know what it had done and where all the files were because it was using its root access to bypass logs, which is really suspicious. Then on top of that, it didn't have the encryption it claimed it had. So all in all, it really sounded like, I mean, best case scenario, if that stuff is true, they were just sloppy and marginally malevolent, you know.
I mean, I'm sure they weren't expecting to just blow up like this.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm still confused. Like, I had never heard of them until this pandemic, and then all of a sudden they are the software that people use. What about Skype? Skype does group chat too. Like,
I mean, I'm
so confused why that became the most popular one.
I've been a remote project manager for almost a decade, and I've used a lot of video conferencing software. Never heard of Zoom.
Yeah.
So,
Weird.
maybe I have. I can't. It's hard to remember at this point, but they definitely weren't a big deal.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
they
not
weren't
at all.
the like everybody's favorite thing to do. I started wondering if this was maybe a CIA operation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like the CIA just waited until like there was an opportunity to implant spy software. Essentially, it's structured as malware, not encrypted like it claims it is, and suddenly became ubiquitous, which is something the CIA is really good at, spreading ideas quickly. So, you know.
Get your tinfoil hats on, guys.
Yeah. But I have to say, that's probably a crazy idea. It's probably just a lucky startup that happened to get some good marketing at the same time everybody got locked inside. I was listening to the recent Joe Rogan with Duncan Trussell episode that came out like yesterday. Joe Rogan was saying that he read a book or something that put forth a pretty good argument that Charles Manson was brainwashed.
You just talked to the author of that book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So,
you should listen to that. That's a good episode too.
I'll check it out.
What you're talking about.
So he says that Charles Manson was brainwashed by the CIA either as part of MK Ultra or some other LSD program, trained to be a cult leader, and they taught him how to get people to kill for him using acid. And I got to say, that sounds pretty crazy, but it's a fact that the CIA used acid to try to control people's minds. MK Ultra was Mind Control Ultra, which was it was the German for control, so there's a K instead of a C. But they really did that. I mean, and people have died from going crazy and jumping out of windows and shit from their wacky experiments.
Yeah, apparently this author, I can't think of his name, I feel bad, or don't remember the name of the book, but yeah, he interviewed him just like last week or something, so it's pretty recent as well. He said he's been working on the book for 20 years. Wow. Yeah. And he said that he wasn't even interested in this stuff. Like, it wasn't like he had some like deep curiosity about Charles Manson. Like, he was a writer, like an investigative journalist, and someone, like his partner, boss, or I don't know, was like, hey, do a report on this, and he like actually was like hesitant. He's like, I don't know, everyone's talked about this, and she was like, no, you'll find an angle. And apparently like this shit goes deep. Wow. Yeah.
I gotta check this out.
Yeah.
I'm very curious because I mean, Joe Rogan, he's not dumb, and he's pretty skeptical. He talks about how he used to be easily fooled, like he was convinced the moon landing was fake.
And yeah, I believed in Bigfoot and stuff like that.
I didn't know about that one.
I think all those kind of conspiracy things he was really intrigued by and believed them.
But now he's pretty skeptical.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure he can still be had like anybody else. He can be tricked, but he sounded really convinced. So I am very curious now. I'm going to check this out. I just learned a couple months ago that Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was part of a CIA interrogation program when he was at Harvard. And during that time is when he developed a hatred for society and violent tendencies. And he became the Unabomber. Yeah. And this was in the 50s at Harvard while they were doing interrogation studies. So it's starting to add up. Yeah. Wouldn't that be interesting if some of the most famous murderers in American history were just CIA projects?
Created by the CIA.
Yeah. It's so weird knowing that they do shit like that, and we're just like, well, whatever. Like, what are you going to do?
Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Talk about it, I guess.
That's a good point. Yeah. Hey, listen, CIA, knock it off. All right?
I am out. You're canceled, CIA.
If you came here with acid, probably have a party, honestly. But don't you make me a cult leader. Well, that wouldn't be so bad. Don't make me a murderer, all right?
There you go. You would love to be a cult leader.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being a cult leader on acid. That wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah, it sounds pretty
As long as it's contained. I don't want that to be like the rest of my life, but I'd spend some time as a tripping cult leader. Be fun.
I think that's the name of this episode. Tripping cult leader.
Tripping cult leader. I like that.
All right. I got to pee, which means got to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's 54 minutes. That's how long it takes before you have to pee every time. Thanks, everyone. Check out standardpodcast.com and send us your questions.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.